What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fann of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. And this evening, I'm joined by my good friend Michael D'Arcy of KC Sports Report to talk about this Kansas City Chiefs versus Houston Texans divisional round matchup in the AFC playoffs. And Michael, I think the Kansas City Chiefs might just have the recipe to defeat the Houston Texans in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. And I say that for a few reasons. Number one, this is a team that they just beat last month. And I feel like in the second half of that game, they kind of pulled their punches back. And after the Texans lost Tank Dell and weren't able really to do anything on offense, the Chiefs are like, okay, we are dialing it back. We will see this team again, likely at some point, maybe in the divisional round if they make the playoffs. So we're going to hold our cards until then. Would you say that's an accurate statement? Would you agree with that?
I would say so. I feel like you saw in that first game that the Chiefs were committed to getting the lead, getting comfortable, and then, kind of just letting off the gas, because you were at a point where you were winning by enough where you could have easily put up 35, 40 points. And, Kareem Hunt slid down in that game when he had a breakaway run. That could have easily been, the 35. I mean, they put up 27 points in that game, and they didn't really struggle at any point. And it felt like that was one of those classic Chiefs games where they got up early and the Texans made it close towards the end, but you never really doubted that the Chiefs had a chance of losing that football game.
Yeah, I think, this is what I said. We just did a video on your channel, and I said something similar. I think the Chiefs knew that there was a likelihood that they would see this team again, and they really just tried to get through the regular season unscathed. And DeAndre Hopkins was a player I mentioned because that was a guy, like, it seems like they were intentionally holding him back, trying to keep him under that 60% of the snaps threshold. He's certainly not the only guy that they have held back. Also, Hollywood Brown is a player that has not been here for that long, healthy. He just came back over the last few weeks, and we've seen what he can do in the little time that he's played, but it's not like there's much to go off there if you're the Houston Texans trying to prepare defensively for a player like Hollywood Brown. So I think things have just kind of lined up really well for the Kansas City Chiefs in this game, and they're getting guys back at the right time. Defensively speaking, the Kansas City Chiefs allowed the Texans to go 7 of 13 on third down in their regular season matchup. You'd like to see that come down a little bit more. It felt like the Texans always had a guy wide open on third down, and the Chiefs didn't even have a defender close to them. And that's something that they've struggled with towards the end of the season, especially with not having a guy like Jalen Watson there at defensive back. But if there's even the slightest chance that they could get Jalen Watson back for this game, and he's designated to return from IR as of this moment, we'll see if he plays in this one. But if you get him, I think you could see the third down conversion rate go down for the Houston Texans, not having Tank Dell anymore. They had him for the first half when they did most of their damage. And then also the Chiefs adding a key piece back to the secondary.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that one thing that we don't talk about enough is that once Tank Dell got hurt, the air in that offense just completely got snuffed. Like, they could not do anything. And I feel like their offense has been trying to rebound since losing Tank Dell. And they've got guys like, John Mechie and Dalton Schultz, but those guys don't strike fear into a defense. Now, Nico Collins is fantastic. I want to give him his props. And he is going to be the guy that I think is the top priority for this Chiefs defense to shut down. I'd put Trent McDuffie on him. I would put, maybe Justin Reed on Dalton Schultz. It kind of depends on where they line those guys up. But I feel like the Texans offensively don't have the same amount of health that the Chiefs do. We're talking about guys that are coming back to this Chiefs team. We're talking about guys that ended their season for the Texans, in that last month of the season. So it's just like, do the Texans have enough offensive weapons, to score on this Chiefs defense? You saw in the first half of that Chargers game in the wild card round, that offense was brutal. And if the Chiefs are going to try to get up on the Texans, if the Texans are down 14-0 while this offense is, trying to figure it out, I think it could be a long day for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and I think, a big reason they won that game against the Los Angeles Chargers on Wild Card Weekend was because Justin Herbert turned it over 4 times, despite only turning it over 3 times the entirety of the regular season. I don't think we're going to see a performance like that from Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. And if the Texans aren't creating turnovers like that, it's hard to see them finding a path to upsetting the Kansas City Chiefs. And we talked about those 2 young corners that the Texans have on your channel, Michael, and Derek Stingley and Kamari Laster. And I feel like the Chiefs kind of know what to do with those guys, and what the Chiefs are likely going to do again in this matchup to offset the great cornerback duo of Lassiter and Stingley, and also the pass rush of Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, is quick passes, getting the ball to your playmakers, to the speedy guys, Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, who has really found his stride late in the season. And that's not mentioning guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce, who I think, this stretch of the season is why they're here. And you didn't see so much from them in the regular season, not a ton of big games, but that's because you're saving them for a moment like this. And so while the Texans are going to be worried about Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy zipping around the field, you still have to account for Travis Kelce, who seems to turn the clock back each postseason now.
Yeah, he's someone that is just going to be a thorn in that Texans defense side. And one thing that I also think is worth noting, DeAndre Hopkins gets a revenge game against his former team. And that could be something that in a playoff game, the Chiefs didn't use him very much in the regular season to, retain that draft pick. This could be a real opportunity where he just lights up his former team. I mean, he had some interest. Did he drop a ball in that first Texans game? I want to say that he did, but I feel
He's
like
had a few where it feels like he usually catches them.
But I feel like he is going to turn it up in this game. And the Chiefs are at a point where they just have so many ways they can beat you offensively. We haven't even talked about Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. Like, that's just kind of an afterthought. But if the Chiefs, really want to, they could put a beating, with all of their offensive weapons and do enough schematically to really just, throw off Houston's defense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I like the matchup of the Chiefs offense versus the Texans defense. I felt like the only reason in that regular season matchup that the Texans were even able to keep it interesting with the Chiefs was because the Chiefs just were not great on third down, and CJ Stroud had some really nice throws that kept them in it. But like the run defense for the Kansas City Chiefs, they held Joe Mixon to just 57 yards on 14 carries in that game. And then if you look at what Joe Mixon did against the Los Angeles Chargers in that playoff game, he had 25 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown. I trust this Chiefs run defense to hold Joe Mixon much closer to a game like he had against the Chiefs in the regular season than he had against the Los Angeles Chargers. And that also creates a mismatch for the Texans. The Chiefs run defense has been good all season long.
Well, and it also felt like the Chargers did a really good job in the first half of stopping Joe Mixon. But then when the second half came and they found themselves down in a big deficit after Justin Herbert threw a bunch of interceptions, it kind of felt like they gave up a little bit. And Joe Mixon, the majority of those yards came, I don't want to say in garbage time, but the game was pretty much out of reach. And so I don't know if Joe Mixon is going to have this insane rushing performance, but the Texans in the first half could not run the football. The only success that they found offensively against the Chargers, at least in the first half, was those quick passes. I mean, they tried running the ball, and the Chargers defensive front said, that's not going to happen. And so I do think that the Chiefs are going to have a very similar game plan defensively to take Mixon out of the game and make Nico Collins beat you. Then that's a perfect matchup. Trent McDuffie versus Nico Collins. I'm going to take that for Trent McDuffie 9 times out of 10.
Well, and I think, again, with that loss of Tank Dell, you have to find other ways of moving the ball which involves running the football effectively. And that just creates a mismatch for the Houston Texans because the Chiefs' run defense has been great. And it feels like the Texans are just scraping anywhere they can to get that offense back that they lost with the Tank Dell injury. But Michael, my final question for you as far as this matchup goes and just this discussion is, where is the biggest discrepancy that you see between these two teams? What's a matchup that you look at and you say the Texans just will not be able to have an answer for this?
I'm glad you asked, Josh. That would be Chris Jones versus that offensive line. Chris Jones may have a legacy game against the Houston Texans on Saturday. I look at the Houston Texans offensive line and their tackles you would think would be good. Laramie Tunsil, has been an all-pro before. He's kind of been struggling a little bit. That interior offensive line is something that the Chiefs, and specifically Chris Jones and guys like George Karlaftis and Charles Omenihu, another revenge game, this defensive line could feast against that, poor Texans offensive line. And we kind of saw it in the first game. So I think that's going to be the biggest matchup where it's just like, you guys are not going to win in the trenches. I expect the Chiefs defensive line to do that.
I like it. I like it a lot. I thought for sure you'd say Patrick Mahomes because it's the easy one, but I like that. I like that answer of Chris Jones. Yeah, I think he has the potential to have a huge game in this one. But guys, we're going to wrap up the discussion there. I believe the Kansas City Chiefs have the recipe to defeat the Houston Texans. I think Michael does too. But Michael, last question for you in this one before we go, but where can the people find you?
You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report. That's kind of the one-stop shop for everything that I do. If you guys like the content that me and Josh have been putting out, hit the like button on this video. And also comment down below if you guys are confident going into this matchup. I've seen a lot of different stuff from Chiefs Kingdom being overconfident or, a little bit pessimistic about what this team could do in the playoffs. But I think that the Chiefs have the recipe, and all it's going to take for them to do is go out and play their style of football. And they do that. They win by multiple touchdowns.
And there you guys have it. And Michael's stuff will all be in the description down below, as always. As for me, you can find my stuff on showmefootball.com, arrowheadaddict.com for more. Follow me on Twitter at showmefb. All that being said, though, like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. That's all we got for you guys in this one. We'll see you in the next one. And as always, go Chiefs.